Blasting bombers. A Yankee flyer takes a hand when he sees a helpless Air Force attacked by a bully. Bully zorba. By David C. Cook. Bu adam sanki başka bir şeyler daha yazıyordu. The war had no more than started. At noon that day, the Red Horde struck for the first time at Vinland, driving past the flimsily guarded border with thousands and thousands of well-trained troops and tanks. But the small Wien army was putting up a gallant front, böyle şey, yiğitçe. It had already destroyed scores of tanks with well-placed traps, and the Russian troops, Russian yazacaklarmış da yanlış mı şu harf olmuşlar bilemedim, were being blasted sky high by landmines that had been placed at strategic positions. But even though the infantry was holding back the enemy, Sinki was deadly afraid of an air raid as soon as the first news of the invasion clicked through the wires. Şu virgül olacak bence. The women and children had been removed to safer sections of the snow-covered countryside. Lou Herbert strolled aimlessly through the almost deserted streets of Sinki. Bu Lou Herbert, bu Sir Herbert diyor tabii o zaman. Ejder Avcılar Okulu'nun 13. kitabında sanki Sir Herbert ve neydi ya, Sir Herbert ve Zindan Taşı'nın Hayaletinde öyle bir kitap vardı. O kitaptan beri bu Herbert diye okunuyor herhalde. Bu isimle hiç denk gelmediydim, söyleyeyim dedim. He was in a dilemma. Here he was, an American airplane salesman who should in all rights be neutral. But after all, being a Yank made the thought of conquest of a small nation even more difficult to swallow. He suddenly turned with deliberation, took his hands from his pockets, and walked rapidly in the direction from whence he had come. Like the devil, he said to himself, maybe our ambassador will bawl me out, but I'm going to take a hand in this anyway. Lou hailed a cab at the main street and instructed the driver to take him to the airport as rapidly as possible. And since there were very few cars on the streets, the driver opened his throttle wide and roared through the city at a high speed. When they reached the airport, the klaxons were already blasting. Liu understood the language and heard the man yelling that a flight of New Zealand bombers, demek ki New Zealand'mış, had been sighted crossing the border. Liu paid the driver, legged from the cab, and ran rapidly toward the hangar that housed his sleek, low-wing Hoffman fighter. Herbert knew that he had no official sanction to participate in an air battle, so he waited until the wind planes had taken off. Then he gunned his Hoffman, sped down the field as his mighty motor turned over more rapidly and hiked into the air. He spied the wind fighters in the distance, and he pointed the nose of his ship for altitude, heading in the same direction as the defenders' planes. The Russian airplanes were sighted just outside the limits of Sinkai. Sinkai diye okuması daha doğru geldi bana şimdi. They were heavy bombers of the Gorkai. Gorkai olur ya bence. Gorki type. Gorki type sanki ne bileyim olmaz gibi geldi. And were flying very slowly because of the eggs they carried. Bu eggsler tırnaklar arasında olunca direkt onların bomba olduğunu anladığım gibi bir şey oldu ben. The flight of wind ships attacked the Red Raiders in a group, and almost immediately two of the bombers burst into flames and started to spiral toward the earth in wide circles. The air was alive with tension as machine gun tracers spat and crossed in their mad paths of destruction. Well, here I go, exclaimed Lou, throwing his throttle forward and swooping up his engine. It looks like these fellows are doing right by themselves, but I'm going to put my 2 cents in too. The big engine up front sang in a burst of power, and the American fighter plunged through the low-hanging clouds like a bolt of lightning. Liu fastened himself on the tail of one of the bombers, glued his eye to his gun sight, and pressed hard on his stick buttons. Four streams of cupronickel slugs spat from his machine guns and hurtled through the air at hikayenin sonu, the end. O kadar küçük yazarsanız zor olur böyle. The ship, the ballast weaved a crazy line up the fuselage, and then the ship went out of control as they reached the cockpit and buried in the pilot's back. The ship seemed to stagger a moment when it pointed up at a crazy angle before its plunge of death. But as it nosed down, another Nusian plane appeared directly beneath, and the two ships crashed head-on. A gargantuan explosion. Jesus lan. Jesus, gerçekten Jesus. Yani bir Batı Diller Edebiyatı'ndan bir ders aldıydım bu dönem. O derste işte gargantua ve bir şey böyle bir komedi gibi bir şey. Hatta Shrek'in ondan türediğini düşünüyorum. Böyle bir dev işte anasının karnında 11 ay falan kalıyor. Böyle boyu poz aşırı uzun, böyle koku alma yetileri cart falan çok gelişmişti sanki, yanlış hatırlamıyorsam. Neyse, mesela işte bu Harry Potter'lardan sonra falan onu da okumayı düşünüyordum. Hani bu bir deyime de şey olmuş. Yani ona şaşırıyorum. Gargantuan Explosion. Hani bu Gargantua zaten dev olduğu için Gargantuan olunca da devasa falan oluyor yani, aynen. Çok güzel denk geldi. A gargantuan explosion ripped the heavens. The two ships scattered parts into the wind, which slammed fully blast into another bomber and threw it out of control. A mirthless smile played around Liu's lips as he turned toward another red ship. Now there were only that three left. The winds had done good work and had not even lost one ship. And as the Yank looked, another bomber exploded from the defender's bullets to left. Şimdi devam etmeden aklıma şey geldi. Hani şu an zaten savaştayız, 1940. Gördük işte bu Neyman diyorum. Neyman şeyden, Whiplash'ten. Neymar. Bu Neymar işte Nazilerle falan dövüşmeye başladı ya. Ne diyecektim? Hani böyle bu özel, yani şu an benim o ilgimi çekmiyor. Uçağın bir uçuyor, diğer uçakları düşürüyor gibi geliyor bana şu an bu hikaye. Ama hani o dönemde savaşa gitmeyen işte uşaklar olsun, belki başka sorunları olan normal yaşındaki insanlar olsun, yaşlılar olsun falan, bir şekilde bu insanlar hani savaşa gitmeyi istemiyorlarsa bile en azından böyle nasıl bir his olduğunu falan bilmemenin verdiği çok böyle bilinçaltı diyeceğimiz bir kıskançlık yaşıyor olabilirler bence. Hani bu dergilerdeki bu tarz ufak hikayeler de hani böyle savaşta yapılan kahramanlıkla cart curt işleyen, hani bu hikayeler bunlara hani bir anlığına o savaş meydanında ne oluyor hissini verebiliyor bence. Bir şekilde ondan dolayı şu aralar çok savaş temalı kısa hikaye okuyacağız gibi geliyor bana, onun için ilerleyen sayılarda. You turned on one that was trying to flee, left the other for the winds. He pulled up under the ship to be met by a hail of lead from the bomber's rear gun. Herbert hastily pulled into a chendiel. Hani bu İspanyolca olsa L, iki L yan yana gelince Y diye okunuyor. Chandelier, yani L-Y diye okunuyordu. Chandelier diyeceğim. Başka Chandelier falan bilmiyorum. İki L yan yana gelince İngilizce'de ne oluyor bilmiyorum. Screamed up over the ship and then swooped down in a thunderous dive. He let go with all his guns and broke in his cannon for good luck. Aklıma geldi bu thunderous down in a thunderous dive deyince, bu işte biz karşıdan gelirken birkaç kere kartal gördük. Böyle siyah beyaz bildiğimiz kartal. Kartallardan bir tanesi tam böyle uçuyordu falan. Sonra birden böyle kanatlarını vücuduna yapıştırıp bir daldıydı, böyle aşırı hızlı gittiğini hatırlıyorum böyle. O geldi aklıma. He let go with all his guns and broke in his cannon for good luck. The slugs buried in the bomber's turtle deck, sending metal flying from the ship, and then the big shells hit. A salvo of them smashed into the wing root, and the left panel ripped off. The ship flipped over suddenly and tossed the other wing away. Then the wingless fuselage pointed straight down and sped through the clouds like a streamlined brick. Liu turned in his seat so that the remaining bomber had surrendered and was coming down for a landing under the threat of the wind's guns. Then he settled back again. Jesus. Ana böyle oluyorsa bunu kullanayım lan, ben yakınlaştı uzaklaştı yapabiliyormuşuz. Ben aşağı insin gibisini istemsiz bastım da. And he settled back again, smile genuine this time. Well, that's that for today, he beamed. Who says that a little country is helpless? Ha, that Russian beer is just like an ocean liner in a bathtub. It's too big for its own good. The end. Kırmızı uçakları düşüyordu, duymuştuk zaten. Böyle. Elektrodayız. Hadi görüşürüz.